meeting to order. Alder Johnson.
Here.
Alder Corpus Dax.
Here.
Alder Galvin.
I'm here.
He's here, and Alder Dorf is here. Great. Approval. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Moved by Alder Johnson, second by Alder Corpus Dax. Discussion. Are there any changes we want to make on the agenda, Director Ellenbecker? Or are we good just going right down the line? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Approval of the minutes of the Joint Committee meeting minutes from November 3rd, 2021. Any changes or corrections?
So moved.
Moved by Alder Johnson, second by Alder Corpus Dax. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Moving on to regular business. First item, for discussion and possible action regarding a funding resolution and sole source purchase of the priority-based budgeting. And this will be an interesting, I think, presentation for us. So, staff.
Okay, so yes, a couple things on what you have in front of you is, this is the reason why we're looking for a funding resolution is we're looking to use some 2021 that was received to pay for something that was unbudgeted in 2021. So this is a new software that wasn't in a budget. So that's the reason why there's a funding resolution here. Then there also is a sole source purchase for the software. So that's in here too, so that we can use that instead of going out for a full RFP. And then also, we also have our vendors on the line to give you a short, quick little presentation of what base budgeting is and what it can do for us. The mayor at this point, I don't believe was able to attend, at least not at this point yet. Joe Falls.
He's here. He's logging on right now.
Okay, thank you, Ahmad. And I don't know if Joe Falls, if you had anything more to say about the priority-based budgeting, or did you want them to just jump into the presentation?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think Chris Fabian and Resource X can explain it much better than I can. But really, I think it's just drilling down to the program level of budgeting and trying to make our allocate our funds to what our priorities are, and having a system and working with Resource X to really determine what is a priority, what isn't, and really just kind of rating those programs at a quantitative basis to determine are our funds going to the right place at the right time. So that's kind of my simple explanation of it, and Chris can give a much more elaborate presentation of it.
Should we get it? I'll entertain a motion to open the floor.
Second. Or so moved.
So moved by Alder Galvin.
Second.
Second by Alder Corpus Dax. All those in favor of opening the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, the floor is now open.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. I would, if it's possible, that I could share my screen. I have some slides. I have host disabled participant screen sharing, so I might need to make a motion to have some permissions granted.
You don't even have to move that. You're good. You can just ask for it.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. My name is Chris Fabian. I'm the CEO of a company called Resource Exploration, or Resource X. And we are the creators of a process called priority-based budgeting, which has a software to it and is a completely different way of looking at the budget. So I thank you all, members of the Finance Committee, for giving me an opportunity to present. I'm going to keep my presentation to about 10 minutes or so, and hopefully have some time for some discussion as well. Priority-based budgeting in Wisconsin is practiced by the city of Madison, the city of Wausau, Marathon County, Monroe, Jefferson County, Washington County, and there might be a few more as well. And nationwide by about 300 local governments across the United States and a handful into Canada. From other cities your size, we work with the city of Ann Arbor, Michigan, Lansing, Michigan. Lawrence, Kansas is about your population over. So many organizations that resemble the great city of Green Bay, but there's only one Green Bay, of course, which is why this is so exciting. Priority-based budgeting is a new take on budgeting that has been around for about a decade. And the whole premise is that traditional budgeting at the line item level is fantastic. Traditional line item budgeting has been around for 100 years. I presented earlier this year at the 100-year birthday of the line item budget, actually. But when it comes to what local governments need to be able to do to harness the power of all of your resources and make sure that those resources are aligned with the results that are oh so important to achieve for your community, we need an evolution in the way that we manage and evaluate the alignment of resources with those results. And that's exactly what I'm pointing you to two of the national associations who have declared priority-based budgeting a best practice. On the left is the Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA, and on the right-hand side is the International City and County Management Association. We also present and work closely with the National League of Cities at the elected official level as well. And the reason that these associations have moved towards encouraging the industry to practice priority-based budgeting is in fact this need to graduate from only using line item budgeting to now taking those line items, associating them with the services that we're buying, and understanding the cause and effect between services and the results you're trying to achieve. With a measurement tool, the understanding of our budget in terms of results, then we are able to better make trade-off decisions and look for entrepreneurial ways to bring in new resources or reallocate resources within our existing budget. Maybe we assumed that we couldn't fund. And our company has made its bet on local governments. We believe passionately in the power of local government to achieve these needed results for our communities. I'm a former local government practitioner, and so is the majority of our company. And I want to walk you through some of the things that our communities are actually achieving and the types of change that we're hoping to be your partner to use the budget process in order to enable you to pursue some great things for the residents of Green Bay. The City of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is a practitioner and a client of ours in priority-based budgeting. And when they turned to this process, the reason was because they're looking for a priority, in their case, funding a climate action plan, and they consider themselves quite a leader in this field. However, during the pandemic, when the budget was pretty tight, they looked at their high priority initiatives and programs for climate action and found that they had no money left over to fund those sorts of things, which is typically what we do. So through the use of the priority-based budgeting process, where we identify all services that they offer, we allocate the line item budget to those services, we evaluate the alignment of those programs with the results they're hoping to achieve, and we use that data to then try to find resource reallocation opportunities and new revenue generating ideas. They were able to free up $41 million worth of resources to fund their unfunded climate action plan. And this is Mayor Peduto talking about how you go from having no money readily available in the budget to having clearly readily available resources without having to raise taxes on the citizens overall. So priority-based budgeting is a vehicle to achieve this type of result. Where I live here in the city of Denver, Colorado, different result, same approach. When Mayor Michael Hancock was elected mayor of Denver, he already around creating equity, a greater sense of equity for the residents of the city and county of Denver, hired the city's first chief equity officer, established a very clear definition for what he was hoping to achieve. And yet when it came time for the budget, this unplugged sensation is there was this disconnect with budget recommendations that are coming to the budget office and in front of the council and mayor, and their lack of clear impact on achieving or broadening equity in the city and county of Denver. And so you wonder, why is that? Our result is clear, but our budget recommendations just seem like the same old types of budget recommendations that we're used to getting. And our diagnosis of the problem back to priority-based budgeting is that the city was basing their budget process on line items, which is traditional. And when you consider it for a moment, this is something that everybody can understand. You don't have to be a budget person. and you look at all of the types of line items, whether it's here we have cleaning supplies and materials, or tools and other equipment, or toner and for the copy machines. When we base our recommendations at the line item level, it's awfully hard to conceive of how you might change your cleaning supply and material line item to be more in line with the mayor's objective for equity. So when we start with line items, we get kind of the same old type of requests. However, in the introduction of priority-based budgeting, when we could align these line items and the personnel within a department with the programs and services they're all just part and parcel of the program of snow removal, which you know about. When we can talk about programs, we could talk about how we can change those programs to make better budget recommendations in line with their equity objective. And that's exactly what Denver was able to unlock at that program level. An example, in Denver, it snows a lot. They have a pretty robust snow removal program. There are pockets within the city where vehicle ownership is non-existent and people have to use the sidewalks in order to access public transportation of work. And when it snows, those sidewalks and residential streets become iced over and unpassable. So the budget recommendation was a higher level of service to plow residential sidewalks that is not done throughout the city, but just in certain neighborhoods where vehicle ownership was low and dependence on the sidewalks was high. From an equity perspective, the city of Denver started to see many more budget development requests that were completely in line with their equity result overall. So from snow removal to rethinking revenue collection in the impound lot, it was just a groundswell of way better budget recommendations in order to invest in a more equitable Denver. And that's exactly what we're trying to achieve in priority-based budgeting. More concretely, this is the city of Kalamazoo, Michigan. And much like city of Green Bay, they have a strategic plan. And you see it on the left-hand side, things like shared prosperity, a safe community, economic vitality. And what we do is we break out these results and define them as clearly as possible. So here's the shared prosperity result and all of the ways that you achieve it in Kalamazoo. And through priority-based budgeting, departments are identifying every program they provide, the cost of those programs, and their alignment or lack thereof with results like shared prosperity or safe community, so that we can truly see the budget in terms of looking at it from the top down. How are we investing in the results that matter? So in Kalamazoo, we can look at shared prosperity from the top and say, fantastic, we're investing 4.3 million of our budget. If we really want to dive into the programs, we can and see that it's after school programs within Parks and Rec, or entrepreneurship and neighborhood business support within economic development. We can see the price tag, what we're buying for those services and staffing. And we can even drill down much more further if we want to see the line items that make up the after school programs or the workforce development initiative. We can get back down to those cleaning supplies and office supplies that make up these price tags overall. And that's the nuts and bolts behind it that I can get into it at another time overall. But as I push towards conclusion, I did want to end with a little bit of the how, just so you're left with a mental picture in your mind. But I mentioned that you already have line item data, and all we're doing in priority-based budgeting is adding more context to that data overall. And another way to think about it is that we're recentering the conversation, not at the line item level first, but slipping in this idea that we offer programs and services like snow removal, like the after-school programs overall. We attach the line items to it because you want to know the price tag of providing those programs overall, and that's what these layers being connected is meant to illustrate. We measure other things about the programs you provide that we call basic program attributes, things like, hey, is that program mandated by the federal government or the state ordinances and resolutions? Is that why we provide it, or is it not mandated whatsoever? Who does this program serve? What's the size of the population? Is the demand going up? Does it pay for itself? These are all pieces of business intelligence that we come to understand about each program. Finally, the measurement on the outcomes you're trying to achieve. Does more investment in snow removal in Denver actually lead to a more equitable city? Does more investment in the climate action plan create more sustainability in Pittsburgh, and so on and so forth, all to help us get better insight into the direction that program is taking. What an interesting concept is this program on a trajectory to grow, like cybersecurity and IT? We really need to understand, does that program need more resources? Or is it a program where we can reallocate resources away from it to invest in other areas? All of this represents a shift, as you see, from line item based business intelligence for you as decision makers and policymakers to program and outcome based business intelligence to better inform and drive budget decisions. So that data leads to more insight, and insight, of course, is going to lead us towards the action that we want to take, whether that's an approved budget, which fundamentally this is a budgeting process, but part and parcel is maximizing resource availability through resource reallocation and optimization overall. I'll conclude and say some of our most recent and best examples, if you want to do some additional research, City of Pittsburgh just went start to finish in the course of 1 year from scratch, having nothing, to a budget that's reviewed with a climate lens, all of their budget requests, all of their programs prioritized within the budget overall. And that is a great resource to take a look at. And finally, fairly recently in the April edition of the Government Finance Review, if you're looking for some Christmas reading, the city of Duluth, Minnesota has a great story on their entire implementation and priority-based budgeting overall. But that is about 10 minutes, and I did want to respect your time and see if there are any questions I can help you address.
I know I'll just speak first, just because I had spent some time talking to Director Falls about this. And I'm not sure that I heard this from you, but it's probably in there somewhere. But when he was explaining it, it was a very brief explanation, and it made a very much sense to me. And he said it's like you take and you put priorities on things. And if you see you have a lot of priority ones that are getting a lot of money, but are not a lot of money, but you have some priority 10s that are getting a lot of money, you kind of start looking at that and you say, why we need to prioritize our priority ones first with the money. Now, is that accurate? Because that's how he kind of explained it to me.
Absolutely. I always am interested in the eagerness and hunger to get into some of the technicalities of the analysis. What you're looking at here, this is from another one of our communities, but the Q1 that you see means quartile 1 versus quartile 2, quartile 3, and quartile 4. And these are the priority levels as an outcome of measuring all of your investments into programs and their impact on your results. Quartile 1 are the most influential, the most aligned with the results you're hoping to achieve, whereas quartile 4 are your investments into programs that have the least amount of influence on the outcomes that you are seeking to achieve. And so this is your budget. And the idea or the direction that this points to is, hey, if we need more resources, might we be able to mine and reallocate away from quartile 3 or quartile 4, free up those resources and put them into higher priority areas? And that's what we start to see. So this is a multi-year perspective of an organization starting to decrease their investment in quartile 4. So they're pulling back, someone retires, they don't fill that position, or they reallocate somebody to be now realigned with a program that's a higher priority, or they partner, or they find a better efficiency in quartile 4 or quartile 3 in order to free up and move resources, growing your investment overall in quartile 1 and quartile 2, which have the greatest degree of influence on the results you're hoping to accomplish.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the alders? Alder Johnson.
Thank you, Alder Dorf. Thank you for the presentation, Chris. It was very good. The one question I have is in the overview that was provided to us, it was mentioned that oftentimes reallocation of 10 to 15% can be achieved. Can you just talk through that a little bit?
Yeah. So one of the reasons that we're recognized as a leading practice is our emphasis on a metric that is very important for local governments and is seldom really measured or kept track of. We, as local government practitioners, and you all as policymakers and leaders, windfalls of new resources coming in on the order of 10% of your budget. I mean, American Rescue Plan Act notwithstanding, an infrastructure bill, those are one-time windfalls overall. But as we look out towards the future and we think is really being depended on for safer society, for economic vitality, transportation infrastructure, clean drinking water, and so on, and our budgets remain relatively flat or they grow with economic growth, how in the world are we supposed to fund things like really increased investment in security needs in IT or homelessness issues or opioids? And you understand what that's all about. So we've put the emphasis on analyzing programs to understand where we can free up resources and generate new resources overall. Our method for doing that, I had shown almost in passing, but this is our blueprint, where the left-hand side is where you need money to be reinvested. You intend to grow your investment in a certain area. And the question becomes, where are you going to get that money? So we find you have two levers. You can reallocate your current budget or you can bring in new resources. In Wisconsin, it's awfully hard to bring in new resources, but we can try. So reallocation becomes our primary lever, whether that's sourcing a current program differently, finding a partner who can help you provide a program. So we're going to analyze every program in terms of its sourcing opportunities, finding program efficiencies, providing the same program for less resources overall, or finding programs where maybe they're quartile 4, they're not mandated, somebody else is doing them, they're not paying for themselves, and we can actually look at decreasing service levels that don't really have an impact. Maybe you started those programs long ago. So we have set a benchmark, and our aspirational goal for our communities is to achieve 10% reallocation of your current budget. In 2018, we had our first 10 communities, including Washington County, Wisconsin, who crossed that threshold. Washington County has reallocated over 13% of their budget. And that is every year. That's ongoing reallocated resources of that order of magnitude. And that's how we measure the return on investment in this work. So that, to be clear, the final punchline is we will work with your organization to identify the programs, the costs, the alignment with your results, and identify opportunities for service level reduction, program efficiency, partnership, revenue enhancement in order to find the resources you need to fund whatever your priorities are needing.
Alderdorf.
Alder Johnson, anything else from you? No. Okay, Alder Steuer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chris, for this presentation. It was very informative. You mentioned that Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania has been doing this for about a year, that they came in totally blind. They didn't do a whole lot coming into the program. Do you find that if we went this route that it would be helpful for Green Bay to look at some potential efficiencies ahead of time before getting involved with this? Or does a program like this kind of address some of that ahead of time?
Great question. So I mentioned we have 300 and then some local governments who have gone through it. Almost all of the organizations are starting from a place where you might not have a program inventory. You haven't done costing consistently at the program level. And our methodology is to together walk through it and share from some of the experiences from other implementers. So for example, when Green Bay gets involved with developing a program inventory, which is just a list of the programs you offer, in our software, we have plugged in all of the other communities who have gone through priority-based budgeting. So your departments can scan if I'm in the library or if I'm in police. We have over 300,000 programs from other communities. What are the types of programs that a library is coming up with? How can I get a head start so I'm not spinning my wheels trying to start this from scratch? When it comes to program efficiencies as well, And, Green Bay is going to be different from Madison and certainly different from Washington County, Wisconsin. We can bring to bear other experiences that we've seen for program efficiencies or for program partnerships. But it's not to suggest that everybody's health department can be merged with their neighbor, or everyone's teen programs in the library can charge a fee. Your circumstances will be different, but we'll bring the best practices from what we've learned.
And one other point, Green Bay, our fire department has taken on 2 other communities under their guise, under their leadership. And I'm wondering, with some of the other communities you've worked with, do you find that there are some governments that are combining services or departments, that type of thing? And is that something that's going on after the fact that they have the software, or is it something that goes on ahead of time and then you kind of come in and take a look at it?
So partnerships, one of the things that we'll measure is the degree of reliance that your citizens have on you for a particular program, and also the opportunities for partnerships to occur. And the point in measuring something like that, here's a degree of reliance, is to open up that conversation. So in your shoes, your fire department might be a great insourcing partner overall, where you can provide a program like that regionally. We did the exact same thing with the city of Denver and several neighboring communities who are on the other end of that spectrum, where in their shoes, they're saying, hey, it's a lot of money for us to maintain our own fleet and equipment on the fire side of the equation, let alone facilities, and keep up with salaries. Might we be able to pay into a city of Green Bay or a city of Denver and achieve better service for less money? So it's win-win from the outsourcing community's point of view. And from your point of view, hopefully you're making some money on that as you're becoming a regional partner overall. So take that fire example, and we're going to look at it across all of your other programs too. Take janitorial, much less controversial, but why might we have an opportunity to look at custodial services and other potential partners who you have as well? And you can expand that on and on.
So I've got one more quick question. There are, for example, in the city of Green Bay, there are 4 or 5 garages, police, fire, public works, et cetera. And looking at repeating of services, that type of thing, efficiencies, seeing if there's ways that we can trim up on that or combine. So that's just my last point I wanted to make.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Alder Galvin.
Thank you. Mr. Fabian, when you say you're looking for other sources, are you talking about you'd be looking for grants or things like that?
On the revenue side of the blueprint, grants are definitely one of the options that we would like departments to take a look at for new revenue generation. So if you think about insourcing, it's just another entity paying you to do something. Grant funding often works the same way, whether that's Bloomberg Philanthropies or the state or some other entity overall. Yes, we would like to open the door on where can other resources be brought into the equation, not just reallocation of current resources. So revenues, grants, partnerships, and insourcing are a consideration for sure.
All right. And maybe this isn't for you to answer. It might be more for the administration to answer. But currently, we get the budget literally just before we have to start making decisions. The council is not really involved in the department heads deciding where the monies are going to be spent or how they're going to be spent. Would this enable us to have a better understanding of where the money is going in each department? And for example, one year we had some alders ask the department heads to cut money from their budget, say 1%. And we got some pretty drastic things like, hey, we just won't plow snow, or we won't have any rescue squads, or we won't do this or that or the other thing. Would this enable us well enough advance of budget time to understand budget better, to help us make decisions on where we think the monies ought to be going or not going?
I'll offer my point of view, and then certainly our objective with staff is to work out an exact timeline of, at what points you get to see budget recommendations coming forward. This is a snapshot from one of the modules in the budget development component. So this is before you even have a recommended budget, where all budget requests are actually scored. You can see them from the quartile perspective. So as Pittsburgh went through this, they would have a meeting with a city planning department and say, what's the story on a quartile 4 recommendation? Why are you bringing this forward? This seems to have nothing to do with our results. Can you go back and come forward with this request with money attached to it? Or keep in mind now, we have a new lens on all of the requests coming forward, and requests that have little to do with results are going to have a lot less appeal than budget requests that have everything to do with our priorities. And so all of the budget requests as they come forward have that lens to it. Now, I don't know enough about your specific budget development process, and that's something we'll get into in timeline planning to say, at what point would it be great to demonstrate all the requests coming forward to you all as the departments are coming up with them.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That makes sense.
Now, I can't really see any other pages of people here. So if anyone else wants to ask a question, just could you please call it? Okay, Alder Corpus Dax, I can see you. Okay.
Thank you. So how easy is it to manipulate the data? I'm a director. I don't want any of my resources reallocated because I already feel as though I'm working bare bones. And some of the directors might feel that way. I'm sure it's not, it happens all over.
That represents 100% of all clients we've ever worked for in the history of work effort. Not one has come and said, my budget has a lot of fluff to offer. And we've really been just raking it in, and anyway, I appreciate your question. So a couple of things. So as it pertains to the scoring process in particular, there's some rigor to it. As departments get a chance to self-assess, because that engenders fairness and what GFOA calls procedural justice. They're the subject matter experts. They're the first ones who get to say, hey, I'm in city planning. My program is business attraction. Here's how I see it from a demand, mandate, population served perspective. And here's how I believe that program influences economic growth and what have you. Departments give their first assessment, and we have a second step called peer review. And peer review changes the perspective a bit to allow for novices from different departments in the organization to look at those scores that the department gave and ask some questions and say, hey, business attraction scored really high in safe transportation. I don't understand. What's your logic? And through the peer review process, what we see are that at every level of scoring, there might be little changes. So what you're looking at here, this is Alexandria, Virginia, and you see prisoner transportation. The peer review team knocked it down a little bit from what the department gave it. Everything's normalized on a 100-point scale. But what we're really looking for are those programs where there was a dramatic change in the perspective. So we flag programs that would have moved a quartile based on if you looked at it from the department perspective or the peer review perspective, and those deserve some extra scrutiny and a final deliberation to say it's not like the average is the right score. Here for committee support, the department believed it scored a 50, peer review knocked it down to a 28. What's going on? Why is there such a discrepancy in the opinion? And that's very valuable because causality is hard to begin with, but we all want to be able to see things from as close to the same point of view as possible about programs and their impact on results. And so that's why we end up flagging these programs where they would have jumped a quartile level to say, do we have any metrics on the situation? What else can we dig into it? What drove this massive difference of opinion so we can get closer to the truth? This population of programs is usually less than 10% of total programs across the entire city in our experience. And those become really worthwhile to talk about. Do you think photo radar makes your transportation system safer or not? That's been highly debated. Does this lead to less accidents? Does it lead to less need for patrol officers? Is it revenue generating? Those are the type of conversations that we really want to drive.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Then I would entertain a motion to close the floor by Alder Johnson.
Second.
Second by Alder Corpus Stacks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the floor is now closed. Alders, what are your wishes? Alder Johnson.
Thank you, Alder Dorf. So Alder Galvin brought it up, but I was the one that originally talked about the 1% reduction. And I remember at the time, sort of the example that was offered up was, gee, we're down to the bone, we're just cutting programs at this point. Should I remove garbage service? And of course, I don't think any of us would have prioritized garbage service, but what it did to me was that it exposed a liability in our system that I've kind of lamented for a long time. And I mean this with all deference to Director Ellenbecker, because this is obviously just a product of the system. And that liability being that we are forced to evaluate line items and not programs. And I talked about it at that time that I really wanted to see something that allowed us to really understand what programs were costing us. And we just don't have a product that allowed us to do that. So I enthusiastically support this. To me, the expense involved with the overall scope and size of our budget, I mean, this is what software costs, right? And especially proprietary software that is a sole source. So it's the one sort of, I talk about this all the time in my organization too. When you talk about sort of that next generation, what do assets look like? Data is one of the most valuable assets an organization can own, but it's not valuable unless you know how to leverage it. And everything that I've seen from this software really demonstrates an ability for us to appropriately analyze it and leverage it and compare it against needs and programs. So there's, this one thing, and I don't think we need to get into this granular level right now, but it would be just talking to the directors, just making sure that there is council engagement and probably more importantly, community engagement on establishing those priorities. I think that's really, really critical. So that way, the community doesn't feel like it's being forced maybe from one perspective, that everybody has an opportunity to engage on that. And I think about one of the things that wasn't really talked about, but I read through the documentation, was even being able to assess things like whether or not fees are covering costs. And I'm going to use, like our pet license fee as an example. We charge $5. And when I worked for the chamber, we had a consultant that came in and talked about how the average carrying cost for an invoice is $28. And we were sending out $15 invoices for people who attended events every month, hundreds of them. So in reality, we were losing $8 on every invoice we were sending because there's hidden and indirect costs. And if this software system can actually help us identify that level of analysis to say like, hey, you're charging $5 for a dog license, but it costs you $38 to process it, right? Okay, do we do away with dog licenses or do we up the fee? And I think there's that level of analysis that we can really engage when we have this data. The only thing, though, that when I look at this, that would be a question for staff, and I don't know, Director Ellenbecker, if this would be you, but we are looking to use unbudgeted money that I presume is coming from the Oneida Service Agreement for this year. Where is the $25,000 for next year coming from? Because we've already passed next year's budget.
Yes, we do have the concern that we don't have the 25,000. Unfortunately, by the time this gets approved in December, I think we've already kind of reached out to Chris or Eric and just said whether or not if we started it a month or two later, the money could be spent in December of 21, and then year two could be January of 2022. That could be our first year annual maintenance, and so that we could budget it for next year. So, because yes, we've already brought it to their attention that we have one-time money this year, but through financial accounting rules, I couldn't set aside 65 for the startup and 25 for the next year because, the money was received in 21. So correct. We've asked whether or not we could potentially use year one May ended for January 22.
Perfect. That was the solution I was going to offer up. It sounds like you've already thought through that. So I'm sure there may be other comments, but I would actually end with just making a motion to approve this.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Elder Galvin. Any further? Just seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Fabian.
Thank you all very much. I very much look forward to the opportunity to bring this to the organization. And those stories about garbage collection, dog license fees, those are our bread and butter stories. So I can't wait to make those come true. And thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is rebranding initiative presentation. Actually, I'm on the wrong screen here. For discussion and possible action regarding the funding resolution for the City of Green Bay's branding initiative. Staff.
Okay, this is going to be kind of the reason why these are back to back is this is the same thing. We are looking to potentially use some money that was brought in 21 unbudgeted revenue and budgeted expense. And we would like to set aside some money to put on work toward this branding initiative. This one is a little different. We might have to have another action in the future, but we would like to set the money aside and knowing we're not going to spend it in all in 21, so we'd have to have a budget amendment to carry it over at a future date. But
Director Ellen Becker, if someone were to ask me, boy, where did you come up with $165,000 at the end of November? Why didn't we know about this during our budgeting process, which was back in October? What would I answer? How would I answer that question?
Those are good questions. I'll start, and then I may turn it over to other staff members. But the priority-based budgeting we have been looking at throughout the summer, and at fall time we were looking at. We were going to discuss it. I think we moved a little faster on the priority-based budgeting. I think we could see there's some efficiencies, and we just think that the value in spending that 65 is really, if we can get this moving, we'll be able to implement it already for the 2023 budget or by next summer or fall. And then I will actually have to kind of turn it over to maybe either the mayor for the branding initiative.
Yeah, that's a great question, Alderdorf. On both, the way that I looked at it was I just wanted to make sure we actually ended the year in the black because I had identified the Oneida service agreement money as the source of funding for both of these initiatives. Comfortable moving forward with them if we didn't actually have the money, if we had overages in other areas that sort of ate into what I envisioned being available. I didn't want to bring that forward. So that's why we waited till the end of the year to make sure that there is money available to fund these programs.
Thank you. I think it's just a good answer. Those are good answers to that question. I appreciate it. Continue.
At this point, I'm going to turn it over to other staff. I'm not sure if Mayor, you want to talk a little bit about branding initiative, or if you wanted Director Falls or Director Neal. I'm not sure.
Yeah, if Director Steck-Schulte had some intro comments, that'd be great. Otherwise, we can get right into Mr. Buchanan's presentation. I think he's probably ready to go.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Obviously, this is, certainly in terms of community and economic development's efforts in terms of marketing, the community brand is certainly a very important aspect of what we do. And actually kind of directs and kind of really provides direction for a lot of the really marketing efforts that we do proceed with. I think the one comment I want to lead off with, and I know Mr. Buchanan and Ms. Schley are going to get to, is that this is not just a refresh of the city logo. This is a much more in-depth discussion of what the city's values are and how that gets portrayed and pushed and basically disseminated throughout our various efforts, and not only our department but citywide. So just with that, want to throw that out, and I'll certainly turn it over to Mr. Buchanan to start his presentation, and we'll be available to answer questions once this is done.
Neil, I think someone needs to grant me permission to share my screen.
Okay, just hang on a moment.
Thank you. While you're doing that, I'll just quickly introduce myself and our team. I'm Matt Buchanan. I'm an economic development specialist with the city. I'm joined with Laura and Steph from our department. If you two want to introduce yourselves quickly.
Sure. Stephanie Hummel, Planner 2 for the city. I also run our department's outreach team, and I sit on the city's public relations team.
I'm Laura Schley. I work with Matt and Steph, and I'm the city's public arts coordinator.
Great. Hopefully you're all seeing the front of a PowerPoint. So we have been tasked with looking into rebranding for the city. I think, a reason why our department was tasked with this is, our community and economic developments, we're really the ones often tasked with marketing the community to the outside world. We talk really with developers, with businesses that are interested in possibly moving to the city, potential residents, and tourism. And so marketing is really important to what we do, and it helps us in our jobs. And this is what we're currently working with. It's really not a larger branding strategy. We've got a logo, which has been around for quite a long time. We've got a tagline. It's called "It's All Here." We don't typically use this very much anymore. It might have been more commonly used years ago. But when our department goes out to conventions, to conferences, to meet with developers, to meet with businesses, trying to recruit investors to the city of Green Bay, this is really what we have to work with. It's a little outdated as far as appearance, and it doesn't really speak very clearly to who we are. It's not a strategy, really. It's a logo and a tagline. There's also some challenges from a design perspective with these images. Laura, if you kind of want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't want to get too deep in the nitty gritty of it, but as far as the actual logo is concerned, the fonts that are in the logo are just dated and quite difficult to read. As you can kind of see in that black and white version of the logo, Titletown USA underneath that banner, it creates a difficulty with reading that, and it makes it difficult translating it to print when we're having it through our social media posts or printed materials, things like that. Really being aware of what that background is kind of offsetting those logos is difficult with the current one. In addition to that, there's also just some confusion as far as what is in the logo. I know within our department, there was confusion as far as what the building being depicted in the logo is, which isn't a great start, but I've been told it's part of Bay Beach. And then looking at the color logo, gradients, so that kind of gradual transition from the dark green to the white in that outer square diamond band. Printing gradients is really difficult to replicate in physical printed materials. It just doesn't translate cleanly, and it doesn't give us a nice crisp look for the professionals and the talent that we do have here in Green Bay. On the back end side of it, the actual digital files that we have for editing and using for social media and those sorts of purposes, the digital files themselves are quite complicated and made of many individual pieces that makes working with the design sometimes a little time consuming. As Matt and Neil had mentioned before, looking at a rebranding strategy, it is definitely more than just a logo. The kind of meat and potatoes of a rebranding strategy is really that messaging and that statement behind the logo. At the end of the day, the logo is really just that condensed message from the community. So in a rebranding strategy, you would be getting that brand and value statement, really kind of condensing how the community feels about Green Bay, And then from those messages received from the community, then a logo is developed, and the logo can be used in a variety of ways and placements, and then associated graphics. As you can kind of see here from Two Rivers, there's several examples of their city's logo, along with some secondary uses, and along with that, some examples of advertising that really kind of ties in all of the imagery for Two Rivers. So when you view it, you know it's Two Rivers.
All right, so municipal branding, why is that important? Unlike Coca-Cola or businesses that have a specific product that they're trying to market, cities market themselves for a variety of reasons. We have several different audiences, specific audience that we're marketing to. This image on the bottom is from Wapaka, Wisconsin. It shows that, of course, their city government has their logo that they put on their letterhead to represent who their organization is. But it can be used as, when you've got a larger strategy, there's many applications beyond just that to represent your organization. You can use it for tourism purposes, of course. It can be used by the business community, so the business community can reach out to recruit talent. Also, it can be a way for residents to kind of hang their hat on when trying to exhibit civic pride. The same goes for businesses. It's also important when you look at the city of Green Bay specifically, we are viewed at an international level because of the Packers. And so it's especially important for a community that has that kind of standing to make sure that we are marketing ourselves appropriately. This image of the 2019 Green Bay Packers draft hats, that particular year, the NFL actually looked at NFL city logos to design the draft hats for that year. So the NFL actually looked at our logo and designed a hat around that. So it's just one example of how marketing ourselves through a proper branding strategy can be used at a bigger level. Why rebranding now? Economic development is a competitive game. We are competing against neighboring communities for talent, for businesses, for development. And many of our neighboring communities have actually gone through this process recently. And because of that, they're in a better position to market themselves, to those outside entities. So here we've got De Pere, Kakana, Ashwaubenon, all have gone through this process recently. And of course, it's more than just a pretty snazzy logo to make the community look good. There's a larger marketing strategy here that they can rely on, which we currently really don't have. There's also been some recent opportunities to partner with outside organizations within the community to have a cohesive rebranding effort. Discover Green Bay just this past year did a rebranding process. We can coordinate with organizations like that to make sure our brands speak to one another and work together rather than apart.
Continuing on from that, as far as being a competitive community, currently we're deep in the work from home life, and there's been a lot of studies that even beyond the pandemic, whenever it might end, there's definitely still going to be a large portion of work from home employees, which means that employers are no longer tied to a community because they work there. We can potentially be having residents that work their day job in Texas, but hang out over at Grounded Cafe in the afternoon, which makes it just that much more important for remain competitive with these communities, because people are no longer going to be tied to a city just because they work there. And then another reason why rebranding now, as Diana had mentioned earlier, there is some available funding for contracting that brand consultant. They're just the global view that Green Bay is really projected on. So why not let our best foot be put forward? Put our best faces on.
Exactly. All right, so we've done a little bit of research as to what this might cost. We've learned from neighboring communities nearby within the state of Wisconsin and some examples outside of the state of Wisconsin. Generally, something like this may cost $65,000 to $75,000, sometimes more, depending on how big of a scope you want. But that's generally what we've been finding. Also, on top of that, we would need, of course, some funds to roll out this rebrand, to update signage and materials. So there would be some upfront cost to starting that process. Maybe 25 to 35 to get started. That would not cover the cost for the whole thing, but this would get us started. And we realized that, signage can be updated gradually. When something has reached the end of its useful life, when that fleet vehicle is done with being in service and it needs to be replaced, 2 or 3 years from now, that could be an appropriate time to update certain things. And departments can budget for that as these things occur. It's important to keep in mind that, with this upfront cost for consulting services, depending on how good of a job we do, this is something that could last for years and years and years. If we make very thoughtful decisions, we rely on experts in marketing and design, and make decisions that are timeless rather than trendy. And if we do a really good job of communicating with the public, getting their input on this process, then we know that what we produce will accurately reflect what the community would like. And so that would definitely help us keep this new brand updated for many years to come. All right, looking at our timeline, based on what some other communities have gone through with this process, it takes generally at least a year. If we were to get started here at the end of this year with an RFP, is what we would propose doing through the city's public relations team and staff from the Department of Community and Economic Development. We would develop that RFP together, take it to council, hopefully as early as January, and have a consultant selected by spring. Laura, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah. Following the selection of the consultant, as Matt kind of touched on before, really getting that community engagement and community commitment to help with the rebranding effort. The nice thing about this is, with the timing as it is, we're already going to be doing a lot of community engagement and outreach efforts with the comp plan. So it's a great way to incorporate that into outreach efforts that staff is already going to be taking part of. And rebranding is something that could tie in quite nicely with that comp plan. Following the community engagement, the consultant would take all of that information, mull it over, and condense it into a logo design that we could then release and implement at the start of January 2023.
And that's really our presentation. We'd be happy to take some questions if there are any.
Are there any questions that anyone would like to ask? Yes, Alder Johnson first, then Alder Galvin.
Thank you, Alder Dorf. Thank you, Matt, and the rest of the staff for your presentation on that. Just a couple of questions for you. One is, did we do any consultation with the Chamber or Destination Green Bay, any of the other organizations that would potentially be collaborative partners in impacted by what we're trying to do here?
Not at this stage yet. We're really just starting conversations. But I would foresee us absolutely doing that as we start to embark on that RFP process.
Because I see a lot of overlap there, right? And that's my fear, is inefficiencies that come from overlap. And when we're not communicating, that to me, it would be kind of a wasted effort if we're not having those upfront conversations. And I think about as well the Better by the Bay initiative, that happened several years ago. I mean, and I'm just looking for some perspective on this, right? I mean, because if I'm not mistaken, I think they had millions of dollars invested into a brand of the community. What is it that we are hoping to achieve with the limited budget that we have that Better by the Bay didn't or wasn't trying to do or couldn't do?
I guess, Alder, I would just make the comment of that. I've obviously been on board since February, and I've never even heard of that initiative.
Well, no, it's fizzled out, Neil. So that's what I'm saying. So what, but they had millions of dollars behind that, is my point, right? And we're talking about 100,000. So that's what I'm saying. But they couldn't achieve the ultimate goal. And so it just kind of cycles back into, how are we going to best leverage that investment to achieve our end goal? And for the record, I'm a huge fan of branding. Mm-hmm. So let me just come out of the chute with saying that, to understand how we're going to maximize the investment.
Yeah, I would think that certainly my opening comments, I'll kind of harken back to that, in that, the real focus of this effort needs to be on more of the identity and the value and the position of who we want to be as the city. The logo is literally the 99 out of 100 step that we should be really focused on. And that's obviously the thing that everybody sees and gets interested in and kind of locks onto that. But it's one of those things where we have to acknowledge that, number one, we already have a brand. If we do absolutely nothing right now, there is a brand. It's probably not what we want it to be. It's probably not the reaction if we ask someone from Green Bay. My guess is we may or may not get the reaction that we are hoping for as a community. So how do we address that? Do we kind of work against maybe some of the negative perceptions that may be completely false? First of all, just someone who's not here, but to correct those types of things, and then to really advance the things that we want people to be known, Green Bay to be known for. So I think it is really more of a process, focusing on, basically everything. What the meeting we are having right now here at the Finance Committee, this is contributing to our brand. This conversation we are having right now, anyone watching this, anyone in the media picking this up, this is part of what our brand is and how people perceive the community. Public meetings and discussions like this contribute significantly to that. It's being aware of those, increasing awareness of those types of things, understanding how we do our jobs, even at a department level. Some of the conversations we had in the priority-based budgeting discussion, and making sure that those values are incorporated into those departmental decisions and budgets, are the same thing we're doing right here, and how we present ourselves as departments, how we communicate with residents, and who our audiences are. So I think it's making sure to understand that this is a greater process and awareness of kind of communicating our values and our identity, but then also focusing on specific audiences. There's residents, there's local businesses, there's the international community. There's other, making sure we are very cognizant of who those audiences are. And I think as long as we keep whatever process we engage in and have a consultant that helps with that, to help us focus on those things and be mindful of those types of efforts, that's the difference in being successful. I think, is making sure that we have a process. Yeah. It's not just something where they come in, throw a bunch of design things in front of us, they show it to us, we check the ones we like or don't like, without that backup engagement of really owning that identity and owning what values we really want to be conveying as a community and how we provide services every day.
Yeah, and I think, Director Steckschulte, I think you hit on a good point, and that is you need to rely on experts for something like this. And I think that would be just my biggest fear up to this point in terms of the presentation, is I'm not sure that that's enough funding to achieve the goal. Recognizing in my understanding of what other organizations of similar size or smaller have spent on that same process. And my fear is, right, that we invest that money and then we can't ultimately achieve the goal we want, and then you've kind of wasted that money. which is why, it's so important to get those partners at the table first, and I think of state of Colorado. I bet every single person on this call could identify that emblem, right? That the state of Colorado uses because they do such an exceptional job in their destination marketing, in their business marketing, their government marketing. Everybody is on board with it and they understand that brand identity. By contrast, you look at something like Wisconsin, take our quarter, right? We're going to throw a cow head on there, a slab of cheese, a corn of cob. It's just let's throw everything we can imagine to make sure that everybody's represented, and then nothing gets represented, right? The Milwaukee was rated as having the worst flag in America, second worst flag in America, I think, right? Because that's what they tried to do years ago. And it's about simplicity and elegance, and and sometimes it's more difficult to achieve than not. And so ultimately, like I said, a fan of maybe a little bit of hesitation, only because I'm not sure that it's enough funding to actually achieve the lofty goals that we're aspiring to achieve, and they're worthy goals. And that's why I just having more people at the table who are going to be directly impacted by this, I think, is a really important step. And what I can't wrap my brain around just yet is whether that's a step that should occur first before we allocate funding. And so does the expenditure of this funding, does it have to occur? Does it have to be encumbered before the end of the year?
I just wanted to make a quick note, Alder Johnson. We actually are in active conversation, not only with the Chamber of Commerce, but other stakeholders, including the various folks in downtown Green Bay and other Discover Green Bay, the Oneida Nation. And there has been a general, very light conversation about this happening. Ultimately, for us to move into a more formalized process, which is what Matt and others are putting forward, there needed to be some money allocated for that. But I just wanted to assuage your fears that various types of stakeholders have been engaged at a very preliminary level. We actually have pretty frequent meetings. They've met with the mayor, they've met with other leaders. Generally, we got collective feedback that we do have an outdated logo and that people are interested in figuring out the best ways to make Green Bay reflect its modern and crazy, incredible amenities. And so that is why we're pursuing this from this anecdotal information. And just to be like laser focused, I think Matt and others are just saying that we want to have a purposeful process and not engage people in a process that isn't either funded or concrete or specific, not just a general one. But I just wanted to assuage those fears that we are actually working with our partners and bringing more stakeholders into the room to have this conversation. It's just been at a very high level.
And I appreciate that. And again, I go back to my hesitation, which is I think it's going to take more money than what we're allocating. And so how do you turn those preliminary conversations with stakeholders into something more tangible by saying, hey, if the city comes up with 100,000, can partner X come up with so much money, partner B come up with so much money, right? So that now that 100,000 just turned into maybe $250,000 or $500,000. To really do an impactful job on again, very lofty and worthy goals that we want to achieve. So that's just kind of, where I'm heading with this, and why I was asking if the funding needs to be encumbered now, or if there is an opportunity for us to engage in conversations to get some more tangible action from our other partners.
Yeah, I think those are some good comments, Alder Johnson. That I guess a couple things. The Better by the Bay is a little bit apples oranges, I would say, in the sense that was a regional initiative. I think the intent, I wasn't a part of that because, like you said, that was a few years ago. I think the intent, was to get Green Bay and surrounding municipalities and the chamber and now Discover Green Bay to sort of, move forward with the same image and tagline and all the rest. And I think that fell apart for a variety of reasons, principally being, everybody's more comfortable advocating for themselves rather than the region as a whole. So I think that's a little bit of a distinct effort from what we're pitching today. The other thing that I would say is you're totally right that I think there are a lot of raw materials that are already available to us as a result of the chamber's work and as a result of Discover Green Bay's work. Certainly my hope is that we're able to use a lot of that research and the process that went into those branding initiatives and to incorporate what's relevant into our work here. And then I guess the final point is, Matt has done a fair amount of research on this, and I think he can certainly speak to this as well. But I believe he's comfortable with the amount of money that we're talking about for the process itself. I think, moving forward, if we are going to be promoting this brand and this image and this strategy, really robustly, I think that's maybe where additional funding could come into play. But in terms of, actually putting aside the appropriate amount of money, I think we'll find out more, once we put out the RFP. If it comes back and it's 200,000, then we're going to have another conversation. But I think we're in the ballpark.
Yeah, I can share communities like Two Rivers, Wapaka, Cedarburg, West Fargo, North Dakota. Those were all right in the range between $60,000 to $75,000. Granted, those are smaller communities, but I think that we have a lot of resources on staff that we could utilize that maybe those communities didn't have. As Laura
maybe more concerned, Matt, with the implementation piece, right? Because to do the brand, but then not be able to implement it is where we'll fall short.
Mm-hmm.
If I could just add in on that subject as well, like even if we aren't able to do right off the bat, very impactful community-wide implementation, city staff needs some branding. We need some direction, because along with that funding discussion that was just had with the last action item, our goals need to trickle down to what is our city brand? How are we presenting ourselves in public? What are the programs that help us present ourselves in that way? So I think aside from the fact that, yes, this will be a horse of a thing to implement, and there are going to be a lot of money that needs to be set aside. And, I guess we're not sure how to do that quite yet. But I think it'll be very good just internally that we all have a brand that we could adapt to. I have a personal motto that I try to remember during hard times. It would be so nice to have a city one that isn't, it's all here. Something that is actually meaningful, that helps give us some direction as city staff as well.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any other alders have any questions?
Alderdorf,
Yes,
if I could just, because I don't think my question was ever answered, which is, does this funding need to be encumbered before the end of the year?
Alder Johnson, I can speak to that. It doesn't have to be approved today. We could even approve it in January. We do have to do a resolution to try to retain money that was received in 2021, knowing that, again, at that point, we'll have a better feel that there will be excess. And so that money we could relook at this even in January to say that, and maybe by then we'll have better numbers. At this point, we had allocated up to $100,000. Maybe at that point, it's something less or it's something more. Especially by then we'll have a better feel. But we do have to do something probably by January to put a resolution out that we want to use 2021 money, January, February. So it doesn't have to be done today. That I know that only buys us a couple months, but there could be at least some additional questions asked at that point.
Well, now's the time to get leverage with your partners, right? Once you authorize the money, they're just, you've already got it taken care of. So if you want your partners to contribute as well,
but I don't.
Time to do that.
I think that's a little bit of a different conversation. The chamber has already moved forward with, with what they're planning to do. Discover Green Bay has already, they've become Discover Green Bay, right? I mean, they used to be the CVB. Now they have a different identity. So as I said, the raw materials are there as a result of the work that they've done. We're in the position actually of sort of free riding off of what they've already accomplished. So their work is done. I think their work will benefit us, but I don't think there's more investment that's coming from outside partners.
Anything else, Alder Johnson?
No.
Alder Galvin? Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, yes, I did. Thank you, Chair. The problem I see with this, you're calling it branding, but what it really comes down to is it's branding and it's a logo. And the old logo is hanging right behind Ahmad's head. And that's what the old logo was. And for whatever reason, administration or staff at City Hall didn't like it, and they changed it to the cupola of Bay Beach and the Tower Drive Bridge in the background. And as when you look at things, as a resident of this community, a member of the city, I want to have pride in whatever logo represents this community. I want to have a feeling that this represents all of us. And that's hard to do with a couple of symbols. I mean, you look at the state flag and none of those symbols really represent anything but our history, not where we are now or where we're going in the future. Obviously the Packers have been part of our history for a long, long time. And, I don't really see that changing anytime in the future. At the same time, you want this logo or whatever we come up with, that when someone from outside the state, outside this country sees it, they're going to think of Green Bay, not Green Bay Ashwaubenon or Green Bay Hobart, Lawrence, or any of these other communities that basically are using our identity as part of their identity. And I know there's been a lot of stuff in the city government in the past about that. We don't need to go there. But if we're going to work with some of these other communities, it has to be a logo or a brand that sets us apart from them also, because we're all vying. Once you leave the city of Green Bay, what are we looking for? We're looking for people to move here, and we're looking for people to locate their businesses here. That's how we grow, and that's how we continue to be better. I don't see it as an easy thing when you have to pluck 2 or 3 things or one thing that tries to represent everything that everybody wants. You want to have a roll of toilet paper circling the Packer G? I mean, it's not easy. As to the cost, I would have no idea, what it would take. But once we get that, I think Alder Johnson's right. We have to push it. We can't put it on Channel 4 on cable and on the sides of some buses and think that's it, or have a couple of flags, with it on, or, put it on the side of squad cars, or, hand it out in little tokens. It's got to be something that, we get those commercials from different communities. Come here, vacation here, or move here, or live here, or this is what we offer. And we have to be willing to put that kind of money into that to get that brand out there. Thank you. That's all I had.
Yes, Alder Steuer.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate Matt and the administration talking about this tonight. I think it's an important thing. And I was working in the planning office back in the 80s and 90s, and I think this logo dates all the way back then, maybe early part of the century. But we also had another one, Gateway to the Great Waterway. So in 40 years since I've been here, we've had 2 different logos, and that's it. So I guess the question I have is, in any of your studies, Matt, or staff, did you find that, is there a time frame or a time period that goes well with rebranding? Is it a 5-year, 10-year thing? Does it depend on a community's dynamics, things that are changing? Some communities rebrand every couple of years. Milwaukee did one, American Genuine. If you remember that logo a couple of years back, it was a button, and it was great. It was very simple, right to the point. Talked about manufacturing, but also that there was a true American city. So that's going to be a challenge with Green Bay, because it's an older community, but there are a lot of things that you could add to it. So I guess you can comment on that if you'd like, but those are my observations.
Thank you, Alder Steuer. Are there any comments, Matt, that you have?
I'll just, say I think it totally depends on the process that we decide to go about. If we make decisions that can result in something that's a little bit more timeless and classic, it'll have a longer shelf life. And I think we can do that by having very good conversations with the community, getting their input, and hiring experts that understand marketing and understand design. That will extend the shelf life. Of course, you want to keep it fresh. And so if you can have some imagery that can stand the test of time, then we probably won't have to go through this process again for many years to come.
Thank you. Alder Gerlach, please.
Thank you. This is perhaps the only time in a finance meeting that I feel qualified to actually talk about something, because I am a communication professional and branding and rebranding is something that I do. And so I was thrilled to find this on the agenda. And I looked at this whole presentation before Matt and Laura gave it to us tonight. And I was very excited because I think this city absolutely needs to rebrand. When I moved back here after a long absence from Green Bay and I saw the logo, I was stunned. And I didn't know that was Bay Beach until someone reminded me. But when I got to the end of this presentation and I saw the proposed rebranding timeline, it gave me great confidence because I really see that it's been well thought out, it's realistic. And when I got to the part where they actually show us that they're going to spend a lot of time on discovery, they're not just getting a graphic designer to create a new logo. They're going to spend a lot of time on discovery, and that's so important. I have faith in this process. I have faith in the folks that have put this together. And I think if we go ahead now with the $100,000 that is available, there's going to be something so good and ready that if it needs a little more money, we're going to be able to find it. So I hope you will support this.
Thank you, Alder Gerlach. Anyone else before I make my comments? Yes, Diana.
I just wanted to say, based on what Matt had put together or in the group has put together, they're really looking at implementation to start in January of 23. So there is always that option of budgeting for some implementation of the branding in 2023. As you know, we didn't budget anything in 2022, so that would be tough. But based on that timeline, at that point, they'd have a better feel whether or not more money would be needed by next fall to put something into the 2023 budget.
Thank you. Alder Corpus Dax, I saw your hand go up.
Yes, thank you. I as well am happy to see that this was coming forward, that the city is looking to rebrand. I think it's definitely overdue. Some of the things that Matt had stated as far as the logo itself being a difficult logo to transfer from paper to apparel to whatever else. It's commonplace to have multiple logos that represent one thing, but you have one specifically for like stationery, that kind of thing, and you have one for apparel, because it doesn't always transfer well. Relying on the experts is huge. We can all have our opinions as to what looks good, but just as doctors know what they're doing, lawyers know what they're doing, a car mechanic knows what they're doing, graphic designers and your art directors, your creative directors, they're in this business for a reason. They understand color theory. They understand, what works, what doesn't. I think that's a big part, is relying on the experts to make those decisions that, we might not like, the way color looks or, what was selected, but they understand, why that color works, what kind of emotion it emotes. So I think that part is, incredibly important. And I do like that we have a longer timeline here, because a lot of these times having a husband who is in that business, we want it done for this amount. We want it done in 3 weeks. And it's not something that, it's not in a timeline that's going to give you your best work. It's going to give you something that's just here, this is what the client wants, and we're going to fulfill the needs. So I think, with Matt and with Director Stick-Schulte saying, we need to rely on the experts. I think that's really important, because then you're going to get a product that is going to last a long time. Maybe this is going to last 10 years, 15 years. We won't have to revisit this for a while, versus having a product that's going to fall flat, and then we're going to be back here, in 5 years trying to change the logo of the city again. So I support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Corpus Dax. Anyone else? Alder Johnson.
Just a question, Alderdorf. And this actually kind of applies to the previous agenda items too. But this was being proposed to use unbudgeted revenue from the Oneida Service Agreement. Have they already given their blessing on these, or is this something where we approve and then they would take up afterwards?
It's not necessary. Sign off on it or anything. It's up to us to determine how to spend it.
I thought the original service agreement called for a joint agreement on certain funding. Okay.
No.
And to that point, And to that point, the money has been invoiced and received, and it really just goes to the general fund, and it's budgeted that way.
Okay, I just don't recall it correctly. Thank you.
So first of all, does the Colorado logo have a mountain on it or something? I'm like, I have no clue. So tell me, Alder Johnson, because I just tried to Google it. What is the Colorado logo?
Oh my gosh, I'll send it to you.
You must. You've
seen it. I guarantee
I found
it.
5 different logos, and I'm like, I need to know this. I've been there. Okay, so
The only one I could think of was California.
I can't even.
That was the only one that I could think of.
So anyway, I also think that I think Alder Johnson has a point. It'll need more money for implementation. So I think if we came to the council with just let's have a lot, ask for a lot more money, it would be very hard, I think, to sell that. I love the plan that starts in January of 2022 and in April through September, community outreach, focus groups, roundtables. This is what City Council asks for all the time. Community input, right? And this is in the plan, and it's a wonderful plan. So I am very supportive of this idea, and it's a start. And I think we need to start somewhere. So I'm definitely going to be voting yes on this when we get a motion, and I really appreciate the work that went into this so far. Thank you. Any other discussion? Yes.
Just one quick one, Alderdorf. I also think this is a great opportunity to plug the importance of council strategic planning and the mayor's strategic efforts and kind of documenting and clarifying those, because a lot of that direction will go directly into this effort, I think, in terms of what we're doing. So it ties in really well with the priority-based budgeting discussion and just council strategic planning in general. That could go a long way to setting direction, not only for this effort, but for the budgeting effort you just previously discussed and the comprehensive plan as we get ready to move into that in the spring. So, so just a little back end plug for a council strategic planning too. I think that goes a long way to help setting direction for what staff can be looking at with this.
Thank you. All right, I'm ready for a motion at this point. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Alder Corpus Dax, second by Alder Galvin. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Was that a unanimous vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Approved unanimously. All right, item number 3, report out the 2022 budget tire order for the fire department. I've been looking forward to this one. So Chief Litton.
Well, I'll start first and then I can turn it off to the Chief Litton.
Okay.
This is truly just a report out. This is items that are typically in our budget. It's in the 2022 budget. Typically, they would order them probably in the beginning of the year and they would just move forward and go through the normal process. They can tell you how there's long lead times and backlogs. And so they've asked if they could put an order in now and then not pay it until 2022. And so typically we would come to you first and say, hey, we have a $30,000, $40,000 order, and you'd get approval, and then they would move forward and order it. This is a situation where they put the order in and really reporting out. It's a normal process, but trying to get our name on the list sooner than get our name on the list sooner. But again, I will also, like you said, turn it over to Chief Litton so he can speak to this item.
Okay, Chief, please.
Good evening. I just wanted to, in the effort to be transparent with the council and obviously the mayor, we've been notified and through our experience that we've been dealing with over the last 6 months, some serious supply chain issues on the front of apparatus parts, tires, and actual new equipment. Pomp's Tire right here in town, who actually is all over the Midwest. They have facilities all over the Midwest. Basically told our shop, our mechanics, that they foresee and they are already experiencing very difficult times in getting tires for the sizes that fit our fire engines, our ambulances, and our ladder trucks. And so they made a serious recommendation that we should get on the list, take the tires, put the order in for the tires. They'll store them for us, though we have to pay for them after the first of the year. Short of that, what they're seeing is that in a year's time, unless things improve and nobody has a crystal ball, that these tires may not be accessible or ready. We run through tires on our vehicles because of the amount of wear and tear on them and just the amount of miles that get put on them every year. We have, routine maintenance on them and tires that have to be replaced. So the amount that you see before you actually is for 60 tires. And it goes across the fleet. Some of them are, they run in range from $731 each down to $267 or down to $246 each. The lower numbers would be obviously on the ambulances. The higher numbers would be for higher weighted and larger size tires for the aerial ladder. So just in an effort to be transparent, we can't run out of tires. We cannot have situations where vehicles can't be driven because they're unsafe. And so we took the action based upon the recommendation.
Good. And it looks like it's just a receive and place on file kind of a recommendation, right?
Yeah, we just wanted to be transparent again with the board. Again, it's an order that we're asking POMS to, put them on a shelf for us and hold them. And they're going to bill us for it after January 1st, but we've already taken the action to ask them they don't run into an issue where we can't get it.
Okay. Any questions, alders? Yes, Alder Johnson.
Is this going to be a problem that plagues all of our other departments?
I believe that it will. I will tell you that we've had the same discussion with the work center ambulances a lot. We've had instances where we've had ambulances at the local dealer sitting there for 6 weeks right now waiting on parts. And it's an ongoing problem both on the ambulances and on the fire apparatus side of things of repair parts. We've had vehicles out of service now for 2-3 months at a time waiting on parts, and they've searched all over the country looking, for these parts. We've got, the people that sell them to us, they've been looking for parts for us. And until, the supply chain issues get resolved, we're going to be in this situation. And so, again, that's why we've taken the action here. And I think that it's probably worthwhile for the other departments to kind of take a look at where their fleet's at. We had our mechanics take a look at the condition of our tires throughout our entire fleet, and we're talking across 60 plus vehicles in the fire department. This was the bare minimum they said that they could get by with over the next 18 months.
Well, good thing Chief Davis is here tonight, because then he can make sure the police department does that too, right? Right, Chief Davis, who's maybe not expected to be called on right now? Yes.
I sure can.
Okay. Great heads up for all of us, Chief Litton. All right, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Second by Alder Johnson and second by Alder Galvin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay, and motion carries. Let's go on to the next agenda item, which I have to get to is discussion with possible action regarding purchasing an additional E1 fire engine. And this one I really am interested in seeing because I thought we just did the budget. So help us understand where this
there is just one item. Again, I don't know if Diana needed to. Go ahead, Diana.
We can explain, Chief Litton will explain the how we got to the point of wanting to request an additional engine. The reason why finance obviously has to bring it to your attention is this would be one that we have not secured a funding source. This would have been an item that we would have secured our funding source probably in 2022 bonding. But I'm going to let you, Chief, explain why he's here asking for this item at this point.
So just one item of correction on the agenda on the background. If you go down the line under the background section, if you go down the line 1, 2, 3, 4, number 5, move up engine 431 replacement. It's not actually in the 2024 CIP. It's actually in the 2022 CIP. I have that fire department stuff that we have. So I'm basically, again, because of supply chain issues. So we had an engine go out of emergency service. It was our engine 8. About 4 months ago because it was condemned because of frame rail rust issues. And that was a 2009 Pierce Quantum. And so we had to move one of our other reserve apparatus into that position. So the board just approved the purchase of the first engine, which will replace that engine 481. E1 came to us and said, look, we're seeing supply chain issues going forward. We will honor the price that we gave to you because we know that you've got one on your CIP for 2022. We will honor the price if you order it by December 15th. So obviously, the funding source for that, as Diana has already alluded to, is in the bonding for 2022. There's two issues here. By purchasing early or putting in a purchase order before December 15th, we will have a savings, as they detail to us in their letter that you have in front of you, of between $65,000 and $75,000. That's the increase that they're expecting on January 1st from the manufacturer, from E1. And number two, the lead time right now, they're telling us if we don't grab the chassis that they have reserved for us, the lead time is 16 to 18 more months. So in other words, if we don't take the order now or add the second one, we'll do it whenever we do the bonding in 2022, and whatever that might be. We probably wouldn't get delivery of that until 2024, which is going to put us in a bind with the status of our fleet. And so I'm bringing it forward for council's discussion. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I will tell you that the vehicle, the second one, would replace engine 431 at Station 3. That's a 2012 Pierce as well. We have the same exact frame rail issues there with rusting. It has not come to a condemnation yet, but it is heading that direction. It could be taken off the street 2 years from now. It could be taken off the street 6 months from now. Not quite sure what that's going to happen with that, but I will tell you that we've had outside in the same condition as the one that we just had to emergency take off the street.
Any other questions? Then I'll entertain a motion.
I mean,
I'm sorry. Alder Johnson.
Really, the only thing that this does, correct me if I'm wrong, is it's kind of obligating us to include this in our 2022 bonding prematurely rather than taking up the entire bond request at one time. That's the real downside. The upside is that we could save upwards of $100,000.
Yeah, Alder Johnson, if we put the order in with a purchase order now, and then we'll in right away, there's a prepayment option in the quote that saves us approximately $17,700 if we pay for it up front when we make the order. If we just say, here's a purchase order, go ahead and get it online, we won't pay for it until we take delivery of it, then the savings is just that $17,000 less. It'll give us time to get to the bonding in 2022 and everything as well. So it's a matter of, do we approve it right now and save that extra $17,000 on top of the 75, or do we just wait, put the order in, and then fund it through bonding and when we get to it?
And roll the dice on delivery. So,
Yes.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Okay, and that you're making a motion to approve it, to pay it now, right? Not to,
Yes.
to lose the 17,000. Okay. Motion by Alder Johnson,
Second.
second by Alder Corpus Dax.
Can I interrupt? I
Yes.
just would probably want a little clarity. I don't have $700,000 sitting around because we haven't bonded for it yet. So I'm not sure where I would get the money for it at this point. I mean, again, as Chief had said, that, we're expected $65,000, $75,000 savings now, and then so we can get this year's pricing. If we were to prepay it yet this year with the order, we could save an additional $17,000. So I don't know where I'm getting $700,000 to prepay for that engine at this point.
Okay, I didn't understand that. So Alder Johnson.
Yeah, do you have to, is this particular purchase, is this bonded or is this a note? And do we have to wait until the bond cycle to pull that? Meaning, can you pull a note sooner?
I could look into that. I don't have the answer for that. Yes, I mean, I guess that's a potential. And your other small potential, or, we're going to be talking allocations of ARPA allocations also. Potentially that's a funding source we already have money in. But, that would be, that's for future item number 6 discussion, once we have allocations, whether or not you would ever use some of that money. But you're right. I did not look into any other ways of getting that money in for this early prepayment. There are a couple options. You could at least, we could approve it at this point on whether or not by December 15th, I guess that's really, we have to approve it by next, the council meeting. I don't have that answer for you, Alder Johnson.
Chief, could you maybe consult with the vendor and I mean, I'd still like to find a way to secure that discount. And then could you talk with the vendor to see if they'd be willing to accept a payment in January that would allow Director Ellenbecker enough time to research those options and bring them back to us the next time finance meets?
I'll certainly ask them.
Okay. And if that's, I mean, that would be my motion then, that we take up the funding source at our next finance committee meeting.
Okay, which we can do.
Recognizing that there's the potential that if we don't go down, one of those paths, that we might just have to forego the discount.
Right.
And again, you're only foregoing the $17,000 prepayment discount.
Right.
Other money still stands.
Okay. All right. So do we understand what the motion is?
Yes, thank you.
All right. And I think there was a second.
Yep, I seconded it.
Yeah, and I said January, but really I mean the next finance meeting.
Which is December, right?
Right now scheduled for December 14th.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just occurred to me it's only November still.
Okay. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. All right. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item. And I do want to point out that during Alder Johnson's previous meeting, he did not ask a lot of questions, which is why it was in mine. Does not seem to be a 2-minute meeting. All right, here we go. Number 5, discussion with possible action regarding purchase of 2022 DPW capital equipment. All right, who would like to start?
I will start this and then I'll turn it over to the director. This item is going to be actually going along the same lines as Chief Litton just had. This is the situation where DPW is also looking get their name on a list for orders and use items that have typically and on a regular basis been in the next year's bonding. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Director Grenier at this point.
You're seeing a common theme here, building off of some of the comments that Chief Litton made. What we're finding in our industry is the type of equipment that we utilize is relatively specialized. So with a garbage truck, for instance, a refuse vehicle, that starts off with a fairly standardized chassis, heavy truck chassis, but then a body needs to be fabricated by a second vendor and mounted on that chassis to create a refuse vehicle. A dump truck, seemingly a pretty straightforward type of piece of equipment, where manufacturers are only manufacturing a certain number of these heavy vehicles during the course of a year. So that would be our refuse chassis, our dump trucks, our loaders, things of that nature. We're finding that we're having to get our name on that list to secure a build spot earlier and earlier in the year. And when we started talking about running our bonding cycle coincidental to our budgeting process, that was good news for us because we're able to get our 2022 orders in the fall of 21 in the hopes of securing a build spot. Well, we're not at that point yet, so we're talking about going into bonding. They won't put our name on a list until we can tell them that we have that ability. And then if we're putting our name on a list, even in January, we're not getting our vendors to start building our chassis until usually around August. So the vehicles that you authorized us to replace when we passed the bonding earlier this year, we're still running our old vehicles because our new ones haven't started being built yet, let alone take delivery of them. A couple of years ago, our garbage trucks, at 8 years, our garbage trucks are junk. A couple of years ago, we did not get equipment. DPW did not get equipment. So we extended our vehicles. We're still on an 8-year replacement plan, but our vehicles are going to the 9th year because we had to skip that 1 year. Now we're looking at potentially going out to 10 years because of the lead time on getting vehicles. So much like what Chief was asking, we're requesting a prior commitment for bonding, ours is a little bit more expensive. We're talking, $1,375,000 worth of commitment here, so that we can get our name on the build list in the hopes that we'll actually take delivery of some vehicles in 2022.
Okay. Yes, Alder Johnson.
Director Grenier, do you have to, in the case of Chief Litton, we were discussing a prepayment for discount. Does yours require payment in advance in order to place the order?
It does not. We simply need to, we can put the order in. And I believe from what Nathan told me, there might be some minor cost savings because there are some steel surcharges that are going up and some emissions on our equipment. Nothing to the magnitude of what Chief was talking about. So if we're successful in getting in before the end of this year, there may be some minor cost savings, but again, nothing big. All we're trying to do is to secure our spot on the list so that we can get our equipment built. Otherwise, we're not going to get it.
And this is all equipment that's already beyond its typical life?
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of those things I don't generally like, right? Trying to piecemeal bonding, and that's nobody's fault. It's just the nature of the circumstance around us, but I don't know how we get around this decision right now. So I would move to approve.
Hey, did you second Alder Corpus Dex? But I'm going to let Alder Galvin speak.
But if I understand this right, we don't know necessarily how we're going to pay for this just yet. Is that correct?
Well, essentially what you'd be doing tonight is committing to bonding for this. When you take up the larger bonding for 2022, you're kind of setting aside, you've already committed $700,000, almost $700,000 of that for the fire department, and you're committing about $1.375 million for DPW. So let's just take a number for the sake of discussion purposes. Let's say that the commitment is to bond $7 million next year in levy supported bond.
We've only got 5 left to spend.
Right, you've already committed almost $2 million of that.
All right. I thought I saw some mention of ARPA funds in your proposal.
That's something that you folks can take up under the next or under one of the other discussion items here. One of the things I've talked to Director Ellenbecker about is, and correct me if I'm wrong, some of the ARPA money can be used to offset if we've got equipment that we're having to repair, and our repairs have been pretty expensive. If we've got to replace a transmission, transmission running about $70,000 right now in a loader, and we replaced 3 of them last year. Instead of spending that budgeted money for equipment repair, if you buy a new piece of equipment that doesn't need to be repaired, that would be an eligible expense under ARPA. So one of the things Director Ellenbecker is going to be talking to you about could potentially include utilizing some of the ARPA money to help offset some of these purchases and thereby avoid budget issues.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Director Ellenbecker.
It's not a question. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Both the fire trucks and all the items that have been brought forward to you from DPW was in our last 5-year CIP. And historically, we've done almost a fire truck every year. And these are the same, we get 2 garbage trucks every year. So none of these are requests that probably would be outside of the norm of what would have been brought for you to 2022. Again, Brian Alder Johnson, I'm not comfortable with allocating dollars before we have them, but the circumstances are a little unique at this point. But I just want to let you know, these are not items, these are items that would have been and have been in the CIP.
And up until about 3 or 4 years ago, we didn't bond for our equipment. We had a line item in our budget that every time we used a piece of equipment during the course of the year, we took money out of that budget account and transferred it into a capital account. And then that cap account was used for our equipment purchase. In order to balance the budget a few years back, all that equipment was taken out from various departments, but most notably police, fire, and DPW. For us, that's about 1.2 to 1.3 million a year.
Yes, I remember that, and I think Alder Galvin was around at that time, and Alder Johnson might have been too. I don't remember, but definitely our goal on council has been to get these things back into the regular budget, so we're not bonding and then paying interest on those loans. And so, to me, this sounds like a good plan. And I know we already have a motion and a second on this. Are there any other pieces of discussion before we vote? Okay, all those in favor of approving the order based on the future funding designation, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Director Grenier. Right, next item is item 6. Discussion and possible action regarding a resolution adopting the city's plan for expenditures of funds received pursuant to the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 and the survey results. This was a very interesting read. There's a lot there. So who would like to start this off?
I can start. So this identical item, resolution was brought to you on November 3rd with some discussion, and then there was a recommendation to hold it until this meeting. So this is the same resolution you saw, but at that point there was a request to have more information to see the survey results. Right. And it wasn't time sensitive that we had to have it approved at the November 3rd meeting. So we have brought it back to you with, yes, the results. And so, that's why it's in the packet again. At this point, I'm not sure if anyone else wants to talk to the ARPA, either the resolution, the survey results, or see what questions you have, or again, the proposed resolution has some allocation buckets that we are looking to approve, or they can be amended.
So my understanding is what we do is we look at a broad outline with different buckets, put money in, and then we start looking at individual projects. We can't do everything all at once. We just have to look at, here's some buckets. Are these our priorities as a council where we're suggesting the money goes? And then we'll come back and look at what individually do we need to do, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Who would like to speak? Mayor, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I was just sort of going to echo what you had said, Alder, which is that, we've brought forward this framework. Now you have, those survey results that are available to you. I would welcome any responses that you have to the framework, changes suggested, certainly willing to entertain those ideas. But I think it would be in the best interest of the city to move forward with this framework so that we can all, understand what the priorities are of the city and the council. And then, as I said in our previous meeting, it will be up to council and department heads and other city staff to co-create the details of those, of those buckets of dollars.
So just so people listening and maybe not seeing this can understand, what's being recommended is what we saw before, 10 million for the city of Green Bay capital needs like roads and bridges, organizational priorities, 6 million for affordable housing development and small business support, 3 million for stormwater, green infrastructure, climate resilience, 2 million for crime prevention and neighborhood enhancement, and 1 million for arts, culture, and tourism. Is that the same? Is that what we're recommending? Continuing to recommend? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, again, those aren't necessarily written in stone.
Right.
If we see a priority really shift dramatically in the 6 months ahead or the year ahead, we can alter that. But we are asking for approval on this overall framework so that we can move forward with some planning. Right.
Discussion. Alder Johnson.
Yep. Thank you, Alder Dorf. I would echo your sentiment, Alder Dorf. Some very interesting responses to the open-ended survey, and very enlightening in some respects. And I saw a lot of opportunity, perhaps, to help communicate with our community about how some of these things work and operate. The mayor answered one question that I had, and I appreciate that, which was whether or not this allocation required us to stick with it. And what I'm hearing is that no, we could make modifications later if we see needs emerge. So that's encouraging. The one question I had, though, a couple. One in particular, though, was looking at the amount that we're investing in each year. In 2021, only had $70,000, I believe it was, and the bulk of the investment coming in years 2 and 3, which struck me as a little odd considering that this is kind of relief money. And at least in my mind, I'm wired to think that, hey, the idea was to get this money out, meaningfully, but impactfully, quickly. And we're not even really making any investments in 2021. So could someone on staff, whoever, just kind of help walk me through that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I don't think we're out of line with what other communities are doing. Certainly some have moved faster to get that money into the economy. But quite honestly, I think one of the largest issues with the economy we're seeing, and that was reflected in some of these previous discussions that just occurred at finance, is with inflation. So, there's not necessarily an urgent need to pump more resources into the economy to induce a recovery. I think we've seen the economy bounce back a lot more rapidly than many of us were anticipating. I think it allows us to invest in more long-term needs that we see, while at the same time, recognizing that not all businesses, not all community members have bounced back the way that the larger economy has. So I'm comfortable with the way, the pace, I guess, that we've moved forward with, but definitely want to take some more actions early on in 2022.
And I presume
seems to me that you wouldn't really do anything until we approved it, though. So, I mean, my gosh, there's only a month left in 21.
Yeah, the other thing that
I've lost control. I'm sorry. Mayor first, then Ahmad, then Brian. Mayor.
The only thing that I would say in response to that as well is that we actually still don't have, I don't think, the final rule from the federal government. We're still operating with the interim final rule, which, as I've joked, is only something the federal government could come up with. Is that sort of terminology? Okay. And so, I think many municipalities, ours included, were reluctant to charge into this without absolute direction.
Yeah, and let me backtrack even the question, because in my mind, I was thinking 22, 23, 24. So I was confused on the year, so my apologies on that. That makes a whole lot more sense now. Okay.
Okay.
Where was the question? So there's 23.695 million, and I know we used some of that for it. For the sake of discussion, round numbers, that to me would still leave about $1 million unallocated. I think we did an allocation to fund an administrative position to manage the program. Is there anything left over from there, or is there an intent to withhold an amount for any particular reason?
Yeah, and I briefly touched on this at our last meeting, and these are just very round numbers. Didn't want to allocate the entirety of the amount to allow for a little bit of wiggle room there, but certainly would be open to allocating everything if that would be the wishes of the committee and council.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, Mayor. And I guess I would offer up a motion, and I'll let the Finance Committee react to it. I would make a motion to whatever that number is, Director Ellenbecker, and I don't know if you have it, whatever's not allocated, I would make a motion to allocate it towards arts, culture, and tourism, predominantly because I saw that as a trend that consistently emerged in the comments, but also tourism in particular was an industry that was hit really hard during the pandemic. And so recognizing that this is the smallest bucket, I think it could have some of the greatest impact within that particular bucket. So I think that'd be roughly, if we're talking round numbers, roughly $500,000, Director Ellenbecker.
Yes, that would be correct, because like you said, that's about a 1.3 million. That's not completely allocated at this point. We have allocated 655,000 to the budget, and then we would take off some, correct, we would have up to 4 years worth of administrative salaries. So yes, around $500,000 would be correct at this time.
Okay. And again, reinforcing the notion that these are bumpers. I mean, we'd like to stick with them, but we can deviate if we need to later on.
Yep.
And I'd like to support that by seconding that motion, because I think that is a good use for that, but I really should let the mayor speak. So go right ahead.
No, I was just going to say the same thing. I'm totally comfortable with that.
Okay. But wait, okay, so are we is this an amendment? Because we haven't even dealt with the first part yet. Somebody help with.
I think that would be an amendment to the resolution. Yeah. Is that right?
I think amendment. I think it's an amendment. All right, how about the other alders in the committee? You want to speak to this amendment?
Actually, I agree with it. I mean, it's hard to determine where this money is going to, actually end up. I mean, we've got big buckets of water, but we don't know how that water is going to necessarily be used yet. And so, right. I mean, we've gotten a lot of input from the community, but I think there's going to be a lot of nitpicking and arguing going on in the near future, because I think everyone wants to make sure that it's being used to the best of its ability, and not just paying off debt or buying equipment or taking care of infrastructure things. I agree with Alder Johnson. He's had this constant mantra about, let's do something significant with some of this money, something that's going to impact this community long term, and not just take care of fiscal holes that have been created by issues in the past. Thank you.
Thanks. Alder Corpus Dax, any comment? Oh wait, I think Alder Sturhead is.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, this is great discussion. I think the fact that this isn't final tonight is helpful, but at least we have the discussion going. I just noticed with the survey that nearly a quarter of the survey had talked about tourism and culture, and that really was dropped down quite significantly. So I was just looking at the survey results and then looking at what we're finally deciding on, and they don't quite jive. So I think that'll be thought or food for future talk as well. But I agree with Alder Johnson that I think that the tourism end of it should come up a little bit higher. But these are discussions we can have further on. But I was just looking at our survey and just trying to find out how much credence did the administration put in to that survey. Did they utilize it as strongly as they did, or did they feel that the decisions they made were correct? So that's all.
I appreciate.
Was that a question?
Oh yeah, I'll throw it out there.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. The one thing that I would say, there's certainly some art to this, not necessarily a scientific method involved, but when we're looking at some of the other categories, especially, the lost revenue category, that's we're going to put a lot of money into infrastructure in all likelihood in that bucket, the housing and economic development. In order to make major impacts in housing, for example, requires a lot of resources. And so, I don't think you can necessarily make an apples to apples comparison between the costs necessary to support tourism and the costs necessary to generate more affordable housing. And so I think that's kind of how that played out in at least how I looked at the outlook.
I appreciate the comments. Thank you.
And Mayor, I just wanted to add, the survey wasn't the only thing that we did for public engagement. So over the summer, we actually had stakeholder meetings with small businesses, nonprofit organizations, and other stakeholders. We had 2 town halls. We allowed department heads to also submit requests and ideas for those things. So if you take the survey only as if you only take that out of context of the multiple ways in which we had the most robust public engagement of all stakeholders across the city, and that led to the framework the mayor provided. I just want to make sure we're really clear, Alder, that the survey isn't the only thing that fed into that. There was multiple people, and ultimately led to over 1,000 participants.
I appreciate that. I wasn't saying that maybe it came out that way, but that's fine. I appreciate those comments.
Thank you, Ahmad. Okay, so we have an amendment.
Chair Dorf, it looked
I'm
like
sorry.
Susan House.
Oh, Susan's hand is, I'm sorry, go ahead, Susan.
I would just like to add that when you read through the survey results and the survey comments, you'll see that there may be a large portion for a certain category, but not all of those comments are for that category. They're not in favor of that category. So a lot of the arts comments are, please don't waste money on arts, but I counted it in the arts category. Please don't build another monument that's going to fall apart. I counted it for the arts category. I can do further breakdown and bring that and submit that to you of pros and cons for each category if you'd like, but I did not do that part yet.
I appreciate you sharing that because there's a lot of comments there. And so just because it looks like a preponderance of more comments in that section doesn't mean they're all in favor of having us spend the money that way. And I did feel like there were some rude comments that were left in there, but I won't point them out because I really don't want to bring attention to them. So we have an amendment. Are we ready to? Yes.
Just a point of clarification to Alderdorf that arts isn't the only thing in that category. That tourism, to me, is probably the most impactful one within that category, even though I have a strong affinity for the arts and culture in our community. But just a clarification point.
Okay. So we have a, what do we have? I seconded it. Alder Johnson made the motion on adding some money into the tourism bucket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right. Now let's get on to the big overall motion or discussion. Any other comments about anything? I mean, if not, I'm ready to entertain a motion to.
The only thing that I would comment on, I noticed there's a number of members of the public perhaps online. I don't know if anybody wants to speak. This seemed like the most interesting item on the agenda tonight.
I thought the tires were personally, but I think, is there anyone from the public that wants to speak? Just unmute yourself and say yes, but don't say anything more than that because then we'll have to open the floor. Is there anyone out there that wishes to speak? Unmute yourself and say yes if you do. I am not seeing anybody.
Okay, I just didn't want to blow by that if that was something that someone was here waiting for, so.
Okay, and then somebody else had their hand up or not? I don't know.
Alder Stoyer did.
I did, but you'll have to continue on. I don't remember right now.
I would move to approve as amended.
Okay, motion to approve as amended by Alder Johnson, second by Alder Galvin. Further discussion, seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Actually, Alderdorf. Yes. I was just wondering if, after all this discussion, if there was the numbers in the buckets. Do we have some numbers that we can look at right now, or is that just generally?
Aren't they right in the resolution? I kind of had read those.
All right. Well, with the change, that's all.
Oh, with the change. Good point.
I mean, if it's just a matter of doing simple math, that's fine. But I just thought.
Yeah, I think we're just going to be adding because there was some money left over. So none of those are going to change other than it'll be like 1.5 million, I believe, for arts, culture, and tourism.
Okay.
That's what we did. Good point, Alder Stoyer. Thank you for that. So now we'll have this discussion, I'm sure, at council as well. But thank you, Alders, for amending that. Okay, the next item is it's consideration with possible action on the agreement between the state of Wisconsin Department of Administration and City of Green Bay CDBG CV 21-34. So is this one we should be going into closed session for? Who's our legal? There she is. Yes, Attorney Bungert, what would you like us to do?
Yes, just to discuss strategy with respect to a couple terms, I would recommend going into closed session so we can discuss that.
All right, I would entertain a motion for closed session.
To go into closed session?
Second.
Moved by Alder Johnson, second by Alder Galvin. Alder Johnson gets to read the language.
The committee may convene in closed session pursuant to section 19.85, subsection 1, subsection G, Wisconsin statutes, for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation, which it is likely to become involved. The committee will thereafter reconvene in open session pursuant to section 19.85, subsection 2, Wisconsin statute, to take action on items discussed in closed session if appropriate and to consider the remainder of the agenda.
Thank you. All those in favor of going to closed session, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. We'll move into closed session then. We'll give the clerk. Is that it?
One more.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. I'll entertain a motion then. Alder Corpus Dax.
Motion to go back into open session.
Okay. Is there a second? Second by Alder Johnson. All those in favor of returning to regular order of business, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. We're back into the regular order of business. Alder Johnson.
I would move that we approve the agreement with the administration and follow the legal department's recommendation that was made in closed session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Corpus Dax. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right. We are now in informational. The contingency fund still has $104,650 in it. Its committee meeting will be Tuesday, December 14th at 4:30 p.m. Anything else that we need to know? No. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Alder Galvin. Second by, I think, Alder Johnson.
2.5 hours, Alderdorf.
Yeah,
Jeez,
well,
man.
yeah, I'm asking questions at your meeting next time. All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Have a
Good
good night,
job.
people.
Good week.
Good night. Thank you.